I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside me the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP Martin Daubney and the co-founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller. Right, I want to get into the conversation. We've just been talking a lot about crime. I was actually going to move on and talk about a bit more crime, but I've got to be honest with you, I'm a little bit crimed out now, quite frankly. So instead, I'm going to talk to you about striking workers. Pretty much every sector these days seems to be on strike, doesn't it? And it seems to have been going on for quite some time. But I found this quite interesting because Network Rail have said that they will be refusing annual bonuses for staff who went on strike. This basically will affect up to about 20,000 members of the RMT union. We're talking about amounts of about 300 quid, but for me, the amount is kind of irrelevant. Yeah. What I want to explore is the principle. Do you think it's fair and reasonable for a company to do this? Totally,
100%. Mick the Grinch Lynch stole Christmas. He then stole our summers. And now he's like trying to go on about and get the world's smallest violins out because they won't get their end-of-year bonus. No. You know, you willingly took part in this at great cost to the economy. £1 billion total, £25 million for every weekday, £15 million for every weekend this strike went on. A great personal cost to the individuals. How many parents out there had to get extra childcare or couldn't even go to work because of train strikes? Great additional costs having to drive, reprogramming the way we travel around the country, doing the train service a huge disservice. I think they deserve to be penalised like this. When they say it's their right to withhold their labour, that's a striker's right. Surely it's an employer's right to withhold an annual bonus if you can't be bothered to go to work. Cry me a river.
Alan Miller?
Well, that's the argument the Network Rail are making, is saying that they were crystal clear in advance that if people did this, the performance-related bonuses would be impacted, and some people may think it's acceptable. You could make the point they got a 9% pay rise, and that would not have happened had they withdrawn their labour and challenged it. Maybe it would, but the argument that you need to be able to withdraw your labour and it should be a right, even though new measures have been brought in to try and prevent that, which I think are very disingenuous by the government, that you should be able to do that, and they did get a 9% pay rise.
What's disingenuous?
Well, I think the thing is that if you try and prevent the democratic vote happening in a union, right, by putting legislation in place to try and make that problematic so that then you can force them to go back into work, that is a problem, right? People should be able to vote. Now, in this instance...
But likewise, if you don't have any frameworks and people can just literally down tools and go on strike for as long as they want, as often as they want,
haven't seen, so we haven't seen that, and what we've seen is that it was a disruption. I think the bigger question is this with all of this, because you can get into the kind of Punch and Judy situation. There's an issue with our transport and infrastructure and logistics. There's an issue with pay. There's an issue with investment. And there was a whole issue with lockdowns and all of those things that have had an impact. And I think the reason we're in a cost of living crisis is partly to do with all those things. And we need a national, ambitious debate and a way of improving our infrastructure, our travel logistics, and that people get better pay. I think everyone should get much better pay, and we should be able to make it profitable.
Yeah, but the whole thing about...
that needs ambition, and that needs commitment by the employers, by those investing in infrastructure, not just trying to make profits with the way it's.
But the whole thing about lockdowns was it restricted our right to work, and the rail unions have been restricting our right to work. It's the same thing, and it's also draped in political ambition. For example, you talk to, I've had ding-dongs with RMT staff on this station, and they're nakedly sort of saying this is a political argument. They want to inflict maximum damage against Conservative government, because a lot of them are old trots. Yeah. You know what they're like. This isn't just about pay, it's about politics. They want to cause damage. And us lot, we're just stuck in the middle. We're the mugs who have to pay through the noses to get anywhere by the train, and then we can't even get to blooming work.
Let me ask you this, right? There's a few words, I've got a colourful vocabulary when I'm not on telly. There's very few words that impact me and affect me, but there's one word, right, well, there's a few actually, but one of them, that really creates a response in me, and that is the word scab.
Yeah.
So when it comes to striking, there are some people that, for whatever reason, they've probably got families to support, they physically cannot afford to be on those picket lines, or maybe they just don't want to ideologically, whatever. What do you think to that notion of people being scabs?
Well, the funny thing is, I've been called that by an RMT former executive on this channel, because my dad was a miner who initially went on strike for 3 months when the coal strike came in '84, and then didn't. And the reason that Nottinghamshire did that was because Arthur Scargill wouldn't give Notts lads a vote. Yeah. It was like, give us a vote. and the chances are we're going to vote to strike. But they didn't get a vote. They were told to strike. So that's been lost in the fullness of time. But to this day, Michelle, people still... I've seen 80-year-old coal miners want to fight each other still
I know.
about this. And that word is a particularly loaded word that still to this day gets... octogenarians ready to go.
Well, it does. And there is a thing about solidarity, but you have to win hearts and minds to do it. So the point about the Nottingham coal miners was that there should have been a proper democratic vote. Calling people names because you want to shut that down and you don't think you're necessarily going to win that vote is really a massive problem. I think the other thing is that there should have been more of an attempt by the RMT and others to win the hearts and minds more. I think Mick Lynch did a fair enough job at making his case, but he didn't win enough hearts and minds. And I think that there's a question of the private sector who quite understandably think, hold on, we don't have some of these other benefits and we're often going to get discarded. Now, that's not for us to compete with one another about. I think that's an opportunity for us all to insist on a couple of things. One, we need far better infrastructure and investment. Two, everyone's pay should be much more. How do we get that? We get that by having an ambitious approach, a long-term approach, not short-term measures.
In the public sector and the private sector, higher wages.
Absolutely. But the way you get higher wages is you increase productivity. Our productivity is sclerotic in Britain. It has been for a long time.
How do you do that? There's no trains.
Research and... OK, but you're taking it in the instance. I'm saying that a range of things, right? There are all sorts of measures, as we've seen, like bullet trains, right? There's all sorts of measures like proper new drilling techniques.
HS2, 100 million quid. It's a white elephant.
HS2. If you look at the drilling techniques that now have come with nanorobots, if you look at some of the measures that Elon Musk has proposed with his boring and tunnels, if you look at things like flying drones in Melbourne to carry people around, there's a range. We should have a...
We can't even get...
I know.
I don't know, the whole...
That's exactly my point.
I can't even get to Skeggy.
My point is about this is that in the whole discussions about levelling up, about what can happen in Britain, we should have a future Festival of Britain approach where we have dynamic creativity, investment, and we're not squabbling amongst ourselves, which is what this discussion to me has become about.
I'm not squabbling with you. I'm just in awe of the fact that we're talking about drones and bullet trains and all the rest of it when literally you try getting from east to west in this country. Good luck with that.
It took me 7 hours to get to Wales the other day from London, just from a station there.
7 hours? 7 hours, everyone. I bet you've all got tales of woe when it comes to disrupted travelling on the trains. Anyway, that's a whole topic for a whole different day.